Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. I am your host, Elena Bose. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that authors use to keep us turning the page. Today, I'm speaking to Amy Poeppel about her latest madcap novel, Far and Away, where a house swap goes awry. Two families, one in Dallas, the other in Berlin, are equally keen to escape their hometown, and so agree after a few too many martinis, some rusty German, and a whole lot of desperation to trade lives, homes, and cultures. What could possibly go wrong? Amy's book is the ideal summer read. You'll visit Dallas, Berlin, New York, Copenhagen, and the Baltics without ever leaving the sofa. Far and Away will have you laughing throughout. Berlin and Dallas couldn't be more different, and Amy's characters experience these alternate realities to great effect. Her characters, and there are a lot of them, so you might want to take notes, are lovable in their various different ways. One wonders how Amy is going to resolve the various intricate moving parts that keep propelling forward into an ending with lots of neat little bows. I don't want to give too much away here, but I will say I teared up in the last paragraph. You can try to outrun your problems, but they'll always find you. Same with your heart. Amy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Elena. This is so fun.
Oh, good. Well, I am thrilled to have you. And are you in Brooklyn, or where are you speaking from?
I'm in New York City right now in my
Brooklyn.
husband's and my faculty apartment at NYU, right on Bleecker Street.
Very nice. Very nice. So the idea for this book, how did it come to you? I know that you're a native of Dallas. You're married to, I believe, a neuroscientist, and one of the husbands is a scientist. And
Yes.
you live between New York, Connecticut, and Germany.
Exactly.
So is it in any way autobiographical?
I mean, I certainly used my experiences spending a lot of time in both of those in the two main places in Dallas and Berlin. This is the first book where a cousin actually suggested a house swap book. I've never sort of had an idea come from outside my own brain.
Yeah.
But she said, you spend all this time in Germany and all this time in the US, and the cultures are so different depending on which city you choose, you should do a house swap book. So I said, I love this idea. Maybe I'll do a house swap between New York City and Berlin, because I happen to really love the city of Berlin. And she said, no. Berlin and New York are just too similar. I mean, there's just not enough of that difference. And I thought, what about Texas? And there's just a lot of fun to be had with the two, just those two cultures couldn't be more different. So that was when I just dove headfirst and decided to write a house swap book between these two families in Dallas and in Germany.
It's great, because I've been to both Dallas and Berlin, and they are very, very different.
Yeah.
You just got so many funny parts that were like, oh my God, the recycling in Germany, the Costco, the heat.
Yes.
The rain.
The rain versus the heat. And so in terms of, autobiographical, I certainly have had many experiences as a foreigner in Germany that are really humbling. And I've been trying to learn German for almost 30 years now, and I am so bad at it. It's almost becoming impressive how my brain just will not take on that language. I mean, it's just kind of extraordinary. I think my husband should study me, actually, because I can't do it. I can function in Germany now, but it is kind of impressive how bad my German is. So I've had a lot of experiences of trying to struggle along with my German and just making mistakes in a culture where you don't even know what mistake it is that you're making. So I wanted to incorporate as much of that into the book as I could.
It's so funny. Speaking of which, can you read, there's pages 92 to 94, where there is some miscommunication with a woman who is trying to speak German.
Yes.
Maybe give us a little background. Yes.
Yeah. So Lucy in Dallas is desperate to get out of town, as you mentioned in your intro. And Greta's husband, Greta's the woman in Berlin, her husband has really shocked her by just taking a job at UT Southwestern in Dallas for a year. It's supposed to be for a year, without discussing it with her. He feels he discussed it with her. He really didn't. And they need a place to live. And Lucy has signed up for it. But the two women made this deal really without reading any of the fine print or asking any of the right questions. And so, as you said, what could go wrong? And the answer is pretty much everything. So this is the part where Lucy has sent a quick email, just sort of saying, when you get to the house, do this, this, and this. But Lucy's decided that maybe her German's not so bad, and she'll write the note in German. So Otto came back. They're in Newport Airport. The two families are literally in transit going from one location to the other.
In Newark Airport.
In Newark Airport, exactly. And they don't know that they're all there at the same time, but they're literally crossing paths in Newark. Otto came back and sat down in the seat beside his briefcase. He's just spilled coffee all over himself, by the way. I use the hand dryer, he said, but I look anyway like a man with incontinence. Are you eating candy? May I have some? You don't eat sweets, Greta said. Normalerweise, he said, but that looks good. She reached over their bags and handed him a Hershey's Kiss. You might not like it, she said. It's not as good as Lindt or Milka. The texture is waxier. You hold very strong opinions about chocolate. Selbstverständlich, she said. I'm German. Otto carefully removed the foil wrapper and bit the kiss in half. You're right, he said, chewing. But still, Greta looked over at him in surprise. What's gotten into you, Otto? What do you mean? Champagne and chocolate? Why not, he said. He leaned back and looked at the travelers milling around. Greta got her phone and connected to the airport Wi-Fi. Oh my, she said. Lucy wrote to me. In German. I didn't know she speaks German, Otto said. Greta could barely make it through the first sentence. She doesn't, she said. Well, what does she say? Otto asked. I have no idea, said Greta. Lucy had made an effort of sorts, but a painful one. She hopes everything goes well with the livestock? What is livestock? Said Otto. Cattle, said Greta. Otto turned to her and smiled. There are cows? Liver, said Greta, turning over and trying to parse Lucy's incomprehensible sentences. She's bringing onions to our apartment? But why? Said Otto. How should I know? Something about a cleaning lady and sex and a naked bear? She handed Otto her phone, her stomach starting to hurt again. It seemed all too fitting that her sister Bettina had steered her into a mess of some kind. I am not taking care of cows, said Greta pointedly, or goats or any other kind of farm animal. I have allergien, said Otto, putting on his reading glasses, to most animals. I hope this is a misunderstanding. Greta was furious with herself for committing so hastily, and after a night of drinking, why hadn't she asked more questions? It was not like her to rush into a big decision. I should have packed away all the china, she said, hating the thought of this woman swooping over to take over her things. I should have replaced every plate in the kitchen with melamine from IKEA. I don't want this woman driving our car or using my new cooktop. Unlike her, I don't have a cleaning lady, and she'll ruin all of my... Greta, said Otto calmly, handing her back her phone. You go too far. Send to me this message, and I will be the one to respond with a few Regeln. Fine, she said, forwarding the message to him. But do be polite. I don't care if she likes us, but the fate of our apartment is in her hands. Natürlich, he said. I will be very, very friendly, just like a Texan.
Very good. And then, you have so many German misunderstandings. Are they all based on what they actually kind of could be misunderstood to be? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And I have a lot of German speakers in my household, so I got help when I needed it to make sure that things made sense. Some of these mistakes I have actually made myself. I actually, in fact, did ask a woman if her children were onions when I meant, are your children twins? Because Zwiebeln and Zwilling just crossed in my brain. The words aren't even very similar, but I smushed them together somehow. So I've made a lot of these mistakes. I've had the experience of walking into a store in Germany and trying to speak German and having the salesperson look at me and nod and then just immediately switch to English, which is always kind. It's a kindness, but it's also kind of humiliating.
Yeah.
So yes, I've had a lot of these experiences myself.
And also you spent a lot of time in Dallas?
I am born and raised. I lived in Dallas until, almost all the way through high school. I ended up spending the last year of high school at a boarding school in Connecticut, but I grew up in Dallas. I was born there and spent the first 17 and a half years of my life there. And I still go all the time. I have family there.
Okay. All right. No, because the Dallas part also was great. Now, I have to know about your writing process because it is a busy book. So I was wondering if you could show us your whiteboard that I saw first on your hilarious book trailer. Everyone should watch Amy's book trailers, especially for this one. I just loved it. So show us your whiteboard and how you did it.
Yeah. So I'm not the most orderly writer. I don't outline generally because I can't know what's going to happen in a book until I've written the book, and usually until I've written the book completely the wrong way, and then I trash the entire document and start over again. The way my brain works is a little bit more like my whiteboard here, which if you can see, that was kind of my visual.
There we go. That's a good one.
For how everything was sort of connected and related in the book. And it just helped me because it was a lot to keep track of with these two families, and each member of the family had their own problem to sort out and their own problems that they were running away from. And this book, I mean, I have to say, the whiteboard is kind of a great visual for me because it was a lot to hold in my head. I sort of bit off a lot deciding to write. I loved every minute of writing this book, but when I realized I was taking on, two sets of two families with everything going on two different continents, with two different time zones, in two different languages. I mean, the time zones thing might sound like, well, who cares? But if you have one of the characters calling the other and it's 2 a.m, like that's not going to make any sense. So just having to finagle these things. If you have 2 Germans and they're speaking English, why are they speaking English if they're both German? So it was just a lot of things that I had to work through. And then I wanted to throw in, I wanted every single character to have a life that they were heading toward and leaving behind. So it was just a lot of worlds to create, which I love. But for me, this kind of a visual where I can just jot down notes on a whiteboard is super helpful to me, especially since I'm not an outliner.
So you don't outline it all beforehand?
I don't. And it's funny because, I taught high school English for a long time, and I'm a huge believer in the outline. And I would outline today if I were writing an essay of some kind where I'm trying to make an argument, trying to build. Somehow with fiction, my brain doesn't work that way. I have to really figure out who these people are, figure out how they would behave. And so sometimes I'll get to page 50 and I'll realize these characters would never have done these things. They would never have said these things. Now that I know them better, they wouldn't have done this. And it's just start over again. I mean, the sweet spot, I started the sweet spot over from scratch. That
you mean you wrote it and you wrote it again?
Yes, I didn't throw it away. I just put the entire document away and knew sort of what I had learned from the first round and opened a blank document and just started again. I had the perspective wrong. I had some parts of the story that just weren't working. So I just started over.
And I love the book. That's the one that I interviewed you on before.
Yes. Yep.
So this one, you not only have these two families, so you've also got Lucy from Berlin trying to pretend she's still in Dallas to keep this job with people in LA. So you've got that where she's lying about where she is.
Yes.
So she's getting no sleep. And then you also have Mason in New Mexico on a NASA thing.
Yes. I've got Mason off the grid.
You've got Mason off the grid, and you have Greta's mother. She's also having a good old time.
Yes, she's having quite an adventure. I always think, especially, when I write, I tend to write with a big cast of characters. I like to heavily populate my worlds that I'm in. But sometimes when I start new books, I think this book is going to have 2 people. I'm only going to have 2 people in this book. I'm just going to focus on that. But I just feel that the human experience is about our connections to people. And so when I start writing and I'm thinking, Greta, well, does Greta have parents? Where are her parents? What happened to them and what's their connection? And who wants to know and who cares what Greta's up to when she packs up and leaves? Like, who's going to have opinions about that? And sometimes, I worry about like, just, is it just too much? But I don't know how to write characters that feel true to me if I don't surround them by the people who care about them and want to check in on them and know who they are.
Yeah. You do that. That's real life.
That's real life. Mm-hmm. Exactly. If you suddenly decided that you were going to pack up for a year and leave, who would need to know? Who would you want checking on your house, or who would you want watering your plants, or who would you want, to give your new mailing address to? So it seems just almost impossible for me. Like, if you said to me, cut one of these characters, it would be like pulling a thread out of a sweater. And I feel like the entire sweater would just fall apart because those people are sort of woven in a way that I hope bolster your sense of that character.
Yeah.
Being
you also
real.
have some bit characters that I liked. The pool cleaner.
Yeah.
With his headphones.
Yes, Mickey.
Yep. And then you've got Sylvie, the woman next door. You also have these bit parts that are, I mean, it's great. You have a big imagination.
Thank you. If I put them in, if somebody's going to make an appearance in my book, I want them to matter more than that one time. I mean, other than maybe the news reporter who stops by to ask if Mason is at home and if he could interview him, I most of the time, if I toss a character in, they're going to show up again. So Mickey shows up in kind of these little key moments, and Sylvie ends up quite important by the end of the book. Yeah. She ends up sort of taking a bigger role. So if I work somebody in, I want that person to matter as much as possible.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really the decoration. That's the most fun part of writing, is when you suddenly think, oh, we could bring back the pool boy, I think the pool boy needs to make an appearance here.
You also, when I read it again, you plant a lot of hints about what's going to happen later.
Yes.
It's all the time. Like, oh, I didn't realize that. I can't remember now. But you're foreshadowing throughout that you don't pick up when you're reading it the first time.
That's really, to me, one of the biggest joys of writing is that I wanted neighbors. I needed neighbors. So when I sort of created Sylvie, I suddenly decided that I wanted her new to the neighborhood also. And she comes over and issues this invitation to Lucy. And then I thought, okay, well then we need to bring what's happening with the party. Sylvie's trying to welcome herself to the neighborhood. What's happening to her party? And then I thought, well, Greta could get the invitation. And then I thought, well, that's interesting. But what if Otto could go to the party? Like, what if he could be the only man, just as Mason is the only man in this biosphere? What if Otto could end up being the only man at this little housewarming party? So that to me, when those things start to kind of click, it's really, to me, that's the most joyful part of writing.
And I was nervous the whole time that Mason was in the biosphere, that he was going to maybe have some affair with Veronique. The sexiest man alive.
The sexiest man alive.
Yes.
Which I now know does not come out in the summer. It comes out in November. So that is, for all of your listeners, if you're looking for a big fat mistake in my book, it's funny. That I have the sexiest man alive. I have it announced in the summer. That is not real life. So, oops, that's my bad.
God.
No, but Mason, I think Mason, I wanted him absent. It was quite interesting to come up with a reason in the day of cell phone and technology and our constant connection to each other. How do you get rid of a person? And I literally sat there when I started to write this book. I wanted Lucy to have a summer on her own to solve her problems by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted her husband missing. So what do I kill him off? Do I have them be divorced? do I send him on safari? Like, do I send him to the moon? Like, what can you do? But I didn't want her to have contact. I wanted the contact to be hard, sporadic, impossible, one of those things.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to put him in a Mars biosphere. And I went down the rabbit hole and did all this research about these biosphere projects that NASA does, sometimes in conjunction with a private funder. They're fascinating. There's a really interesting collision of hard science and make-believe that I just find fascinating and hilarious. I think it's so amazing to be doing real science and really contributing to, mankind's understanding of like the world and how we're going to do space exploration. But they're acting. They can walk outside. They're just in New Mexico. They're not actually on Mars. And so there was sort of a sense of a playfulness in that I thought, that's what I want. That's what I want to do. So I did a lot of research on biospheres, and I sent Mason off to live in one. And then I just had communication failures, so that it would make any kind of conversation impossible. I really wanted to reintroduce Mason, and I don't want to give anything away, but I wanted him to have no idea of what had been going on in his absence. Just no idea.
And that when he does reappear, he's wearing his spacesuit.
Yes.
The visuals.
Yep, he's got his jumpsuit on, and he's looking a little more fit than before he left. And but he's a good guy. Yep, I think we can feel safe that Mason's a good guy.
Yeah. Now, but that brings me to something else, which is the research. So you've got these characters. They all have their different professions. He's an astronaut or whatever you want to call him. Maybe that's not the right word. And then you've got I think that Lucy's a hotel consultant.
Yes.
That would be the right job.
Yeah.
Greta is an art expert. And then Otto is a foot surgeon.
Yep.
Did you have to do research on all of those?
Yes, I really did. I had to go on the UT Southwestern website, and that's where my father actually used to work in Dallas. My dad was a cardiologist at UT Southwestern, but he was all research. I mean, he saw patients too, but it's a teaching hospital, and my dad was a researcher. So I thought that's what I want him to do. I want him to be a surgeon, but I want him to be researching the cutting edge of all things feet related. And so I did a lot of research on that. The Vermeer piece of the book, Greta's piece of the book, is the one that was really the most interesting for me, because when I lived in Berlin, I met an art historian who's written this beautiful book that I hold up in my book trailer. His name's Benjamin Binstock, and he wrote this book called Vermeer's Family Secrets. That's all real in the book.
I was going to ask you.
And I listened to him give this very interesting lecture about how he really believes that Maria Vermeer, Johannes Vermeer's daughter, painted at least 6 or 7 of the paintings that are attributed to her father. And it's not trivial. I mean, his research is really thorough. He can argue quite clearly that these were not done by Johannes Vermeer. And then it's sort of a process of elimination of how he gets to Maria, that he can't have had an assistant, because that assistant would have to be registered with the guild back in the Netherlands in 15, whatever, that it can't have been anyone else in the household because nobody is listed or registered. And it could be a woman, because it's illegal. A woman can't be registered. It has to be somebody who was really in the household all the time. And so he finally comes to the conclusion that there's nobody else it could have been but Maria. So I decided to work that into the book. Very clever. I had to reread Ben's book, and I had to call Ben, because the one thing that is made up in the book is I made up a Vermeer painting.
Oh, the girl with the red turban? Totally
Fictional. I got him to help me title it, and we decided right around the time when it would have been painted. And it could happen. That's the kind of thing, that is not impossible, that a painting could resurface. This happens all the time. And because many Vermeers have been called into question, nobody has decided, like, yes, Maria painted them, his daughter painted them. But there are paintings that were like previously attributed to Vermeer, now unknown. So I just thought,
did they know that the daughter painted? Was she known to be a painter, Maria?
Not at all. Okay. Not at all. We have zero evidence that she painted. So, I mean, his theory has gotten a lot of pushback. And you can Google Benjamin Benstock. The stories about him are just fascinating. I not only just called him a lot to help consult with this, but I reread everything there was to reread on Vermeer and this whole scandal. And it's just interesting. He has so few works anyway.
Yeah.
So to be questioning the few that there are is quite scandalous.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, when you talk about your writing process, that you just kind of write, when you come up with that idea, do you suddenly go off from writing and suddenly you're researching Benjamin, whatever his name is, like then?
Yes. I sort of go down a rabbit hole,
Right.
or I sort of put a pin in it and I think like, I'm going to get back to that. But the bigger question for me is, how does this serve my story? How can this thing that is of interest to me, like I find this interesting, great. So what if it's interesting to me? How does it serve the story?
Right.
And I thought it could really upend Greta. And I needed Greta to get upended. I needed her sense of sort of stability and knowing what she thinks she knows to be set. I also really liked in her relationship with her own daughter, the fact that they talk about sort of quiet sexism that we just sort of tolerate in life, and that certainly exists in Germany. And how it's just certain roles between husbands and wives are just accepted. And I wanted her daughter's perspective on that, because it's just younger people and the way they see these things. But then to have that kind of relate to the Vermeer thing and whether or not a daughter, why is it so impossible that a young woman could have painted these masterpieces? Like, why can't we just accept that that could happen?
Right.
So when things start to sort of align and relate to each other, I go, oh, that's good.
Yeah. Especially when you have Jack as a sex trafficker, which he...
Exactly. The accusations against Jack, who, I was just going to say, when George Saunders, his book, A Swim in a Pond in the Rain. It's a big purple book. It's a beautiful book. Any people any of your listeners who are interested in writing, it's just wonderful. He takes these Russian short stories and then analyzes them, and really analyzes them from a writerly perspective. How does Chekhov do this? How does he convey this? But he talks about when an idea lights you up, that it's sort of like putting your hand over the burners of a stove and just, which one's warm? Which one did I turn on? And you want to go toward the one that's feeling warm. Like you want to go toward the thing that kind of lights you up. And those are the things that light me up.
I love it. No, it was great. What about the teenage girls in Dallas? How did you get their whole language? That was also like a whole other language, like German. I
had my niece, who was also born and raised in Dallas, reread all of my sections of dialogue on that.
Yeah.
Would they say this or not? She made me take something out. I can't remember what it was now. And I didn't want to take Cray. I was like, he's totes Cray. And she was like, that's so old fashioned. I was like, old fashioned. She's like, nobody would say that anymore.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I thought that was just, on the cutting edge.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. But I wanted words that are just incomprehensible, even to someone whose English is pretty good. So I needed these teenagers to sort of speak a language that would make Emmy go, what? Like, I thought my English was pretty darn good, but I have no idea what this girl is saying. I mean, miscommunication was important to me in this book in all kinds of different ways. Whether it's satellite snafus or language barriers.
Or what do you call it? Telephone thingy where the rumors about Jack and the next thing you know.
Exactly. The telephone game. Yes.
The telephone game.
Yes, because the truth is, and Jack questions himself about this. So our teenage boy, Jack, who, again, very good person at heart, but he's a little bitter and he's a little frustrated and he's very smart. And he comes up with this list, and it's sort of at the same time that Greta is compiling her list of paintings and what their values are. And they're all paintings of women. And he's making his list of girls. And what it looks as though he's done is not what he was really doing. And it gets misinterpreted, or it gets interpreted in the least charitable way possible. And we can sort of question why that is, and whether or not I'm the first person to call out sexism when I see it, like the first one. But sometimes I think there is a nuance that I wanted to sort of have Jack be a case as a mom of boys. I'm a mom of 3 boys myself. And I just sort of wanted to say, if your son does something stupid, but the punishment is way greater than the crime.
Yeah.
And how is that interpreted by different people who hear the story? How do different people hear a story and make up their mind about it? And often it's about connection and knowing people. And if you don't know somebody, you're much more apt to make an uncharitable analysis of something.
Yeah.
So I wanted Jack to have sort of a summer to think and to process. And I think humiliation in teenagers, I think, is one of the worst things I can think of. A teenager, the insecurity, especially now with social media, and the notion of being truly humiliated in your community, I think is just the worst thing I can think of.
They needed to go to Berlin. They needed to escape.
They needed to get out of town. And so I needed what happened to be bad enough. That was a tightrope I had to walk, to have it be bad enough that they needed to get out of town, but to have there be room for there to have been a big misunderstanding, and that Jack is really a very good guy.
Yeah.
Who let his bitterness, I think, sort of get the best of him in a weak moment. But I don't really think he did anything that bad. But we can discuss. That's
exactly
definitely open for discussion.
So just to, maybe you've already covered it, like the most fun part and the worst part about writing this.
Oh my gosh. I think the most fun part of writing this was getting to explore really in depth for me all of these places. I mean, the Baltic, that was the one place in the book I really didn't know. I spent a lot of summers in Copenhagen growing up because my dad did research at a hospital there. So I knew Copenhagen well. I know Dallas well. I know New York well. The Baltic, which I just wanted, it just always sounds so beautiful and mysterious. And I just don't know much about it. So that was fun, talking to a friend of mine in Frankfurt about different vacation spots and where do people love to go and which ones are more touristy and which ones are more sort of secluded. And then going there, I went and I drove around and I looked at houses and I took pictures. That's one of the pictures that I took here. You can see on my little thing that picture of the beach. These little
gorgeous
thatched roof houses on the beach, and what's that like? And so that was just the locations were really fun for me. Going back to Berlin and seeing all of my own haunts and peeking through the doors of apartment buildings and looking, just picking, literally, I picked her apartment. I picked the apartment that she lived in. I was like, that's the one.
Oh.
So that was really fun. I know exactly the street, exactly where it is.
Did you get to go inside?
I did not. But I've been inside a lot of Berlin apartments, so I kind of have a sense of what it was like on the inside. And actually, in my head, it's very similar to the apartment that we've been living in Frankfurt. I just sort of had that model in my head of my own apartment in Frankfurt, and I just plopped it into that other really quaint, lovely building.
Does yours have a balcony?
Mine has a balcony. It does indeed, because Americans love a balcony.
I know.
And then I think
that line.
I think the worst part for me was, I often feel when I'm writing, like I'm just spinning plates, like I'm trying to keep all these different things aloft at the same time. And there was a moment toward the end where I just thought, I can't do it. I was under deadline, and there were so many loose ends to tie up, and there were so many ways that I could decide to do it. And I think it was just having all of these people matter to each other in a way that would really put some icing on the cake, which I won't spoil again. But I wanted this house swap to have implications that would last forever. I wanted there to be no going back from this house swap. You think, oh, it's just a few months, it's just a summer, or it's just, but I wanted the things that happened that summer to be so consequential that it would matter for the rest of everybody's lives. And how do you do that? That was kind of a challenge.
You did
to
it.
do that.
You did do it.
Well, thank you for saying that. It was because it was. Oh, and one last thing that I'll say: when the two women are off on their trips within their trip, so when Greta's off in New York and Lucy's off in Copenhagen, and I was sort of figuring out what they would be doing, how they would spend their day, and I found the two kiss sculptures in the two museums. And they're both having thoughts about their significant others and what they want physically and like what they need physically from a partner, and where do things stand with their spouses. And I had Lucy go to the Glyptotek, and I realized that there's that beautiful Rodin sculpture of just that passionate kiss. And then I had Greta in the Met, and I realized that there was this little German figurine that I went and looked at of this couple, much more formal, which was so perfect that like Lucy's kiss was naked and passionate, and Greta's was more prim and they're clothed, but there's this longing there. And I just wanted it. So when things like that happen, that was joy. That was total.
Oh, it's great.
That was when things just lined up.
It sounds like a lot of fun. It connected to this kind of is a question I had. Home is often described as where the heart is. In your book, what do your characters discover about what truly makes a home when they're displaced from their surroundings, including Mason in Mars or New Mexico?
Yes, it's such a good question. I think it's community, it's loved ones, it's friendship. I think it's so much more important than the place itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this as somebody surrounded by my books. I like to be in my home.
Yeah.
But I think what really matters is the people in your life, your family, your pets, your parents, your children, your neighbors, your community. And I think what was so hard for Lucy was feeling that got shaken, that her community was sort of rejecting her and her son. And Otto finds a new community when he moves to Texas, which is a beautiful thing. Like because that shows you can build a new community when you need to, and that's wonderful. And then the only question becomes, if one person is building a new community and the other is longing for her old community, what does that do?
That was good.
And that was, something we're thinking about. But I think to me, it's about, and I say this as an introvert, but I think it's all about the people in your life. They say that's what helps us live longer, makes us healthier.
Exactly. And Greta learns that because Greta, who's living in this perfect little apartment in Berlin, learns what matters is the people, even if the china and all her things her herringbone gets scratched. And
coasters are not as important as the people sitting around your table. I think that's really...
Exactly. Yeah. So you published your first novel at 50, and Far and Away is your fifth.
Yes.
What creative freedom have you found in starting your career in a later stage in life that might not have been available to you earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a much harder career than I thought that it was going to be. The writing is one piece of it. The idea that you're supposed to actually succeed at it is a whole different topic. That you're supposed to actually sell books
for an introvert too.
Yes, exactly. And I think, so Far and Away is coming out just like 2 weeks before I turned 60. So it's been like a decade of having this brand new career. It's definitely sort of a perfect thing to have happened to me, since it's the thing I like to write about the most, which is women of a certain age realizing that there are possibilities and there are opportunities, and that you can start something new, that you can have a whole new life if you need to. So that's been really sort of just a nice discovery for me to make about myself, at the same time that it's something that I'm really, really yearning to write about. I think also I have more I want to say the older I get. So I think that's actually working in my favor, even if I'm not 27 and have 1 billion followers on TikTok. I mean, I can't do that, but I can bring my experience to things and my voice to things that I think I just wasn't ready to do when I was in my 20s and 30s. And some people are, and I think that's amazing when some people have things to say and are ready to just open up and say them at a young age. I just wasn't. I mean, I think I needed to do other things first.
Right.
before I was ready to do this. I think also it's really nice to be in a place in your life where you have a thick skin. I have such a thick skin now. I mean, I'm sensitive in certain ways, but if my editor says this is not working whatsoever, you have to start over, I'm like, okay, I guess I got to start over. Like, I just roll up my sleeves and I don't get my feelings. I might be exhausted, but I don't get my feelings hurt. I don't get upset. I just say, okay, let's do the work. Let's just do the work. Because at the end of the day, that's all this is. I think that's been the biggest discovery for me, is that it's not magic that maybe comes and then goes away. And now what are you going to do? It's just like any other job. You have to sit down and you have to do it. And you have to accept the criticism and start over when you have to start over and just do the work. You just have to do the work. And I think that's been kind of a relief to me, because I wrote my first book and I was like, oh, what if that was just a one-off thing? And it's like, no, you sit down and you get your blank whiteboard and you start to populate it and you figure out how these things are going to fit together, and you write a terrible, terrible draft and you rewrite it. And you
How many drafts did you have for this one?
I can't even. I mean, seriously, I couldn't begin to tell you. 60. I don't know, because I don't sort of write all. I mean, I write a bit and I start over, and I write a bit and I start over, and then I write a bigger bit and then I start over, and then I keep one chunk from that bit, and then So I'll, just to give you an example, this book, I have two families. I need to get them out of town. In one of the first versions of this book, I was on page like 220 and they hadn't left yet.
Oh.
And I was like, well, that's not good. How do I get them out of town faster? What can I trim? What can I shorten? But still make it believable that they need to leave town? And that this house swap actually happened. Like, how do you make it believable, but tighten? But I just thought, I can't have a house swap book where they're still living in their houses at page 200 and something.
You made them leave within the first 24 hours. They had to leave, didn't they? About almost 24 hours.
Almost 24 hours. Yes, exactly. And honestly, I think it's still too many pages before I get them to Newark Airport, but I did the best I could. And also, I think it's okay because so many things in those initial 24 hours end up quite relevant to the story as you move forward. So it still takes them a while to get going. But you're right. In the time scale of the book, it's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick. I was like, oh my God, pack your suitcase. Your flight's leaving in 2 hours.
I mean, so the Jack situation, we went back like a week before, and everything that happened. And there were whole scenes of Lucy in the principal's office, which I think I needed to write. I needed to know what happened. I needed to put Lucy in the principal's office, hearing the story. So it was all in there that they had these long conversations. And then I just had her go into the principal's office, like at the doorway. And then I just cut everything else, because your readers' brains can do that for you. You don't have to hold their hand. They're going to get it.
Yeah.
But that was probably 20 pages right there of Lucy arguing with the principal.
So you have to be ruthless. You really do have to, cut. If it's not working, just
cut it.
Cut it.
Trust that your readers are paying attention. Trust that they're going to get invested and go along with you on this story. And don't take advantage of their presence by telling them things that they either already know because you already told them, or that they can figure out for themselves.
Right.
That is hard for me. I want to hold up my whiteboard. I just want to show you, make sure, did you understand that this happened? And it's sort of almost disrespectful to your readers to not assume that they're with you. They're keeping up, Yeah. So that's been a lesson that I have definitely learned.
But you've written 5 books in 10 years.
Yes. 6 books in 12 years, but the first one was never published.
Wow.
The first one was a book that I wrote to sort of teach myself what it means to write a book. And it's still in the drawer. I may do something with it someday, but I'm not sure quite what. But,
and do you have an idea for the next one, or not yet?
I do. All I know is that I live in faculty housing at NYU. Nobody really understands outside of the university world. What does that mean, faculty housing? And basically it means that I live in a dorm full of grownups. Universities in big cities like New York have designated apartments that the faculty can rent because the cost of living is so high in New York and professors just can't pay the kinds of rents that New York. So their way of luring them is to give basically sort of subsidized housing to professors. And it's great. It's the greatest thing. But it's also weird. Like, I know everybody in my building. Like, I know what department they work in. I know what they study. I know when there's a divorce on this floor, or like there's just a lot.
And
going
same people have been in that dorm.
Yes.
Oh, that
basically,
is definitely.
Yes, for 18 years, I think it's been all the same. Nobody's moved out on my hall. It's been the same people. So it's just really interesting. And I don't quite know what I'm going to do with faculty housing. But the other interesting thing is that this is just a terrible thing to say, but this is just the fact of the matter, that the faculty member is on the lease and the spouse is not.
Right.
So if the faculty member dies, you've got a set amount of time to get out.
Ooh.
And I just find that fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, terrifying, given that I live here.
Yeah.
But really fascinating. It's in my lease. I need to go look at my lease to find out how much time it is. But you have like this set amount of time and you have to leave because I'm not part of the university. So I am here as a spouse. So I'm going to do something with that. I have no idea what, but I think faculty
sounds like you might have a death.
I might have a death. Yeah. I mean, divorces are interesting around here too.
Yeah.
But,
that also, yeah.
Yes.
And she might, or he might not want to get divorced because what happens, where are they going to live?
Right.
And you can't probably sue for housing. There's no value to it.
No.
Oh, interesting.
It's really interesting. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I think faculty housing is going to factor in some way, just because it's an unusual setup that has implications that you don't think of like the day that you move in. You just think, wow, this is a great price for a great location.
And my last question is just, are you loving any books right now? Any books you'd like to recommend?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have 2 books that I just read that I love. The book is called The Correspondent, and it's by Virginia Evans, and it's an epistolary novel. So letters from start to finish, and through these letters, you get such a rich, beautiful story of this woman's life.
Ooh.
Regrets from the past, heartbreak from the past, mending things, moving forward, and just the importance of letter writing. It made me want to sit down and write somebody a letter. I'm so sorry that that's gotten lost.
Yeah.
Some of it is emails because, she is writing in the modern day. But the main character even talks about the difference between writing an email versus sitting down to write a letter to someone. And it's fascinating. 2 other books really fast. The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. Road trip book. I loved it, loved it, loved it. It is bonkers. It's the strangest bunch of characters and you will fall in love with them. And it's wonderful. The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett and The Red Island House by Andrea Lee, which is also a book that if you like a book like Far and Away, where if you like to sort of really fall into a location,
right?
If you want to go somewhere without leaving your couch, I strongly recommend Red Island House, which is about an American woman who marries an Italian man and lives in Milan, but has a vacation house in Madagascar.
Oh, wow.
And it's all about race and the past. And it's sounds really beautifully written, and really interesting.
Thank you. 3 very different books.
Very different.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was really fun. It's always interesting for me to talk to authors because I learned so much more.
Oh my gosh. This was so much fun. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode. I love interviewing authors because I learn so much about them. And Amy Poeppel doth deliver. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Amy uses a whiteboard versus an outline because there's a lot going on in her story, and an outline just isn't going to cut it. I recommend everyone watch her funny book trailer. The link is in the show notes and on YouTube. The whiteboard makes an appearance, as does Amy, her son, and his girlfriend. Oscars for all of them. And of course, read Far and Away, which was published this month. It's about a hasty house swap that goes awry, but also has a few unexpected silver linings. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.